Ancient Training Systems presents the Strong History Podcast in association with Macmillan's Martial Arts and Iron Storm Kettlebells.
And welcome to the third Strong History Podcast. I'm here with Danny Macmillan Jr. and Paris Payne. Say hello, everyone.
How you doing? Hello, everyone.
Yeah, all right. So, Paris, we've invited you on here to talk a bit about yourself first, and then about how some of the things that you do run parallel with historical training programs or systems. So, tell us about yourself.
Well, thanks for inviting me to start with. It's a bit of an unusual situation for me being involved with the martial arts thing because I'm not an expert on those things in any sense. My personal history is I started off really as a dancer. I mean, I did a little bit of martial arts before getting into dance. I did hopgar, which kind of, I suppose, gave me a bit of flexibility, a bit of strength, but music kind of changed it all for me, so I was just naturally drawn to dance training. Went off and did that for a good many years. After that I trained as a physio, and since then I've been on a journey which has taken me through becoming a strength coach for elite Olympic athletes, and ultimately, more recently, developing my own system of movement, which ties in and is very strongly influenced by excellent martial arts systems like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, he's training me a little bit now.
He's training you as well.
He's training with me,
yeah.
He's my conditioning coach.
And you're
He's
the Jiu-Jitsu coach.
He's got me through many injuries as well, so
yeah.
I owe a lot to Paris.
Well, I think, yeah, well, you know, there's that mutual respect there, isn't there, mate?
Yeah,
It's,
for sure.
we call it training,
Mhm.
and then we certainly do a bit of physical stuff, but we also do, you know, say from a dance perspective, you look at it as free-form kind of movement play, which allows you to, you know, develop and grow ideas.
Is that really similar to like you see the Ginasta Natural and Bioginasta sort of movement systems?
It was the stuff I showed you when Hickson Gracie was moving.
Oh, right,
just on
yeah.
the beach and moving, yeah.
Sure, I'm not familiar with those terms, but
Well, yeah.
again, my
Yeah.
mentor has introduced me to that
Because
stuff.
he actually showed me that stuff, like from dancing, but I said it was similar to the way Hickson Gracie was moving. And yeah,
I mean, there's a whole
we
bunch
went
of-
off on a mad one, didn't we?
We did, and the thing, certainly the thing for me, but I think also, you know, for Danny and maybe for you as well, is that the element of the purity of the movement is the fantastic thing. That's what kind of stimulates you to get into these things in the first place. And I think as you become more experienced, that's the thing that you really engage with, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
what about
that
your
is.
experience?
Yeah, that is. Yeah,
You know?
I mean, I trained in fixed movement patterns for a long time, and you feel, you know, you feel really strong when you're lifting big weights. So you're deadlifting, your deadlift gets up big, higher and higher and higher, and you feel really strong. And then you go to pick up a stone that's maybe not even a quarter of the weight that you deadlifted, and you can't even move it off the floor, and you think, well, what's happened here? And the thing that's happened is you've trained in a fixed movement pattern so much that you have no idea how to move ever slightly differently, because it's not too far away from what you're doing. You're still moving your hip, but you've never moved it through a different range, where these movement systems allow you to move through a full range of various different motions.
Well, that is the real key, isn't it? I mean, I get through my work with elite athletes, and you know, Ben Proud this morning did me good and has just set another British record, which ensures his place on the GB Olympic team.
Nice one.
Which is really good, 50 freestyle. And so I get people contacting me and say, what's the secret to, you know, because these guys, they're all power. They're big, powerful swimmers. You know, you've got some very powerful athletes there. What's the secret to blah, blah, blah? And we all know, don't we, that there aren't really many secrets in life, because often the basics, doing the basics well, is the secret. But if there's one thing that I do, if you like, put forward as the secret, which we all know, is variety. And what you've just said there, because strength and power is so specifically related to the joint angles that if you don't train through those full joint angles, as you said, you know, if you're stopping at 90 with your squat, then when you get down to arse to grass, you haven't trained that range. And so therefore, if you're going to pick up a stone off the floor or whatever, that's a brand new area for developing
many
power.
times when I was training with you, I had no range of movement to that. On my hips were very tight.
That's right.
I
If you
didn't
don't
think they
step
were
outside of those patterns that you use over and over and over again. And the other thing is that's interesting as well in my experience is that people often assume that elite athletes are in a much better sort of state than maybe your average Joe public because, you know, they're the fit, you know, super trained athlete. And actually, because they have, you know, overtrained specifically in certain patterns, they're in a worse state.
Yeah, they're quite often broken people.
Sure.
Isn't it?
Yeah, I was like, I thought I'm good for jiu-jitsu, but I was pretty poor in other areas of life, like mobility. I remember feeling pains never felt before.
Because you train a lot on your back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that can be really bad because you're just putting a lot of pressure there.
Paris could tell you all the problems I had when I came in.
Well, you say that, and I'm not going to dispute with you about, you know, really bad, because another one of my mantras is there's no bad movements, there's only movements done badly. And so therefore, again, if you always train on your back, well, you know, you haven't trained your proprioception and stability around your hips, your knees, your ankles. And so if you've got if you're looking at a combat situation, if you're in a position where you are standing up, you know, you've got a shortfall. Whereas somebody who might be a kickboxer has done a lot more training standing on one leg, but they go onto the floor on their back, and then they're all over the shop because they don't have the trunk control.
Yeah, I went from striking arts to grappling arts, and I remember spending a lot of time on my back, and it was unusual. And I was picking up injuries because I was so used to standing up. But now I've got an happy medium. I think I'm training all areas.
Training jiu-jitsu, you find you're abdominally flexed a lot, which is
when
weird.
you're
which
on
is
your back.
weird. Yeah.
But
which is like when you drill a lot. I mean, obviously you drill both ways on your back and on top, but that abdominal flexion is really weird to start with, especially for me.
Different positions offer different stresses, don't they? So when you're on your back, you're going to feel your abs more. If you're on top, gravity does the work, so you don't have to do as much. But yeah, on the back is a stressful situation if you're not used to it.
Absolutely, and I think what we see, or what I've noticed in working with Danny, is that, you know, he's in great shape. He's got a good, strong build. He's obviously, you know, skilled and gifted as a martial artist and then also as a teacher. But his hips could do with a bit of work.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's a flexed hip quite a lot of the time. Yeah. Either, you know, I don't know the terminology, but, you know, for your...
Yeah, it's because you've got your legs wrapped so much.
Right.
They just become very fixed in that position. Your legs are wrapped and they're crossed behind someone's back. But, you know, you've got to train the opposite of that, haven't you? You've got to train the flexion of it, so you just can become stiff. Like I was. Yeah. Still am, to be fair. I need loads of work still.
Because not only are you working with elite athletes, you work with mature athletes as well to build their flexibility for later life. Is that right?
I do, yeah, I do. I work with a whole range from, you know, like Danny himself, from kids right up to, I think the oldest client I've got currently is in his late 60s. And effectively, you know, what say my approach to it, there's a couple of key guiding principles. And again, I think they're logical from any movement system. But certainly they're heavily influenced by Gray Cook, who's an awesome physio in America who developed the functional movement screening and functional movement training system, right? And those principles are always in this order: mobility, stability, and strength. Now, a lot of guys, a lot of people, you know, get the motivation, go, yeah, join a gym, come on, let's get buff. So they get in there and they go for strength straight away, and they compound, you know, the faults that they had to start with because they haven't developed their mobility, and mobility also includes flexibility. And then they didn't work that mobility into a stability framework before they put the strength on top. How was that for your experience as a strength athlete?
That's what I ended up doing. So I ended up taking my strengths, making them stronger, and making areas that were weak, just leaving them weaker. But whilst other areas were getting stronger, so my lower back was getting stronger and stronger and stronger. But my stability was not getting anywhere really. So while I was squatting in such a weird pattern that I ended up like good morning, 200 kilo squats, which is not good at all. It's especially because I was never really learning how to be properly stable, and I had to sort of unlearn the way I was moving first, and relearn how to do the movement in a more stable and a better flexible pattern. Because I wasn't, a lot of the time I wasn't even going. I was just hitting below parallel because it was so tight.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what was you doing before? Was it strength before, or was you like doing just like regular weight training before? Or?
So after I'd finished wrestling, I wanted to get into powerlifting, but I didn't seek out the top guys first. I just went into a gym and was like, I can do that. It's a piece of piss. And I just did it.
So there was nothing before.
No, I didn't look at like a movement system. All I knew was when I was wrestling, I just got told what to do all the time, and I just did as I was told, and that's it. Didn't ask why, or or didn't ask, well, if I did this, would that help? I just did as I was told, and that's the mindset there is you do as you're told, and that's it. So I didn't look outside. So once I started powerlifting to try and learn things on my own, I ingrained poor movement patterns. I never, and when I ended up going to the British Barbell Club, he sort of scratched his head and was like, oh, right, okay, let's lower the weight and let's teach you how to move in those patterns first of all. But it's still fixed.
Smart guy.
Yeah, it's still fixed patterns.
It's still the same, and it's still a bilateral pattern.
Yeah. So then after that, I ended up going to the temple, Commando Temple, and with a friend of mine who was doing some strongman there, and met Rob, and I took some one-to-one coaching on him to get me. I was having problems. I was feeling tight here, tight in the hips, tight in the upper back. He's like, oh, okay, well, you're starting to do sort of movement training. So I'll do something a bit more functional. So we did things like a bit of foam rolling to try and alleviate it first, and then moving and stretching. So I'd stretch over a keg. Yeah, slowly, while rocking back and forth over a keg. Mm-hmm. I'd do some dead hangs, so just hanging there for a little while to try and stretch that out because it was all so tight. And I remember I was stretching out and I had this almighty clunk. I was like, oh, wow, that's feeling good. Now things like dead hangs and stuff and shoulder dislocations are quite easy. But before, you should have seen it. Oh,
I can just get shoulders pretty easy.
I was like, I was just all hunched. Oh, you can't see me, can you guys? I was all like hunched over forward.
He's now illustrating.
Yeah. Making the fact that I don't have a neck even worse.
No, you look like a swimmer.
Yeah.
All anterior chain, no posterior chain.
Yeah, that was it.
See, even within that, though, I don't want to cut across you, but, I'd see, like, one of my system, if you like, has a very logical progression, but the starting point is always screening. Now, working in sports, as I have done for many years, and particularly with rugby, every start of every season we get a whole new bunch of players in who all think they're God's gift to mankind because they're built like an Adonis and they reckon that they're the best thing. And then you give them a basic movement screen and find out that they can't even stand on one leg.
I remember you give me that slosh pipe. Was it the pipe?
The slosh pipe, yeah.
Oh my God.
Just walk across the room. That's what you had to do.
Yeah. That was it. I was sold.
That's usually a good one for second row because they think they're really good, But the point is that, like you were saying, they train their strengths, and because their strengths are pretty strong, they think they're pretty strong. And then you do very simple movements that, potentially any young child can do, and they can't do them. And it gives you a buy-in in the sense that people start to go, hold on a second, yeah, I do understand there's something fundamentally wrong here. I might be able to lift a huge amount of weight, but I can't actually stand on one leg. So when you start talking to me about you're doing hanging off the butt, I'm already thinking shoulder impingement. Have you really addressed this thoracic kind of mobility? Have you looked at how your scap moves
that
on the back?
That was a massive problem for me, wasn't it? The thoracic. Up the back, I was so stiff. That's why I think that's why I injured my neck, wasn't it? So
Yeah, because you're looking at the spine as a continuous unit, and if you've got a restriction at any point along that spine, and in the Western world, because we are chair-shaped, well, I'm not, but a lot of people are.
Yeah, you can't see us, but he's made us sit a different way on the chair. As soon as
Find
we come in before the
a different
podcast
way.
started, he said you've got to sit on the chair a different way. I think
Don't
it was
let
the rules.
the chair dictate how you sit on
I
it.
think it was the rules for him to do this podcast.
Yeah,
You're not allowed to sit any other way. not allowed to sit a normal way on the chair.
Yeah.
So you were sat up like a Buddha.
Which is hard because
Yeah, you look like a good little Buddha.
calves
A Buddha in
in
jeans.
a way.
Slightly tight jeans.
Buddha
but,
shape. Looks like you're going to blow the jeans out of him.
These, I want to start. These are
Jeggings.
36 ways, just normal. These are normal
He's got
jeans.
jeggings.
Yeah,
Are you sure?
Yeah,
they
they're
look like
ordinary
jeggings
jeans.
to us.
Jeggings.
regular fit jeans. These are
Wow.
Regular fit for
regular fit.
That's some serious swole you've got going on there underneath
Regular
them.
fit for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings. I mean, I've got actually quite short legs, so they're quite short and stumpy like the rest of me.
Yeah, it's not comfortable to sit there, is it?
It's not amazing. It's not amazing for me to sit down.
So lucky you've got a baby on the way, 'cause
Yeah.
you're going to get another one.
Is it?
In those,
Oh, is that why he's sitting like that?
Yeah.
he's trying to restrict them for the next batch.
Yeah.
Getting his hips ready for childbirth.
Put your legs on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, where's that weird? Yeah.
We are sat.
You were talking to me. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about ancient training systems.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about that. I mean, what's the difference then between ancient training systems and then modern training systems?
Well, there's a period where modern systems get really fixed, and it's quite a short period. But
When you say fixed, what you
as
mean?
in like fixed movement patterns,
Right.
like the popular, especially
Oh, getcha.
in the early 80s through to just until in the last sort of 10 years, I suppose. These
It's about the
movements
time disco
yeah.
was improvising. Martial arts were getting more rigid.
But the big
You mean not martial arts in general, just strength?
I mean fitness in general. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean like
Yeah.
physical culture as a whole.
Yeah,
It's getting
absolutely.
really, really
we
fit.
see the increase of machine-based gyms coming onto the market.
Yeah, it's not so much like a martial arts discussion.
No.
It's more like
Yeah.
training system.
Yeah. So we're talking
I
about
see.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
So so back the Romans have a odd training system, especially with gladiators. They have that sort of stability idea. They also really liked to break gladiators as well. So
With lions.
with novices and
Like
what
training system.
they do with like the novices and that, they'd have like a bit of a hazing ritual, but like a really, really nasty one where they'd keep them awake for 3 days straight, and they'd make them doing all sorts of different training and sparring and stuff, and they'd spar with like the top gladiators in the school and get their arses handed to them every time. That kind of hazing ritual, but they also did a lot of flexibility. They'd have massages, they'd be bathed, well looked after. And they do a lot of sort of movement training as well as just like raw strength. And any strength training done by ancient or classical or middle-aged people was done dynamically. They don't have like fixed movement patterns with barbells like we do now. They don't have that. They didn't have the technology, and that didn't seem like a positive thing to do, because all strength training was done for not just for the sake of strength training. It was done to strengthen them for other things.
Functional
Yeah.
outcome. There was an objective at the end of it.
So like yoga, for example, it was practiced by warriors to increase their flexibility and strength. Like kushti is now like a ritualised wrestling form, but before it was to train warriors for battle. Koshti is similar, again to train warriors for battle. You've got all of these different stone lifting. Isn't just stone lifting. Stone lifting, you don't just heave the stone and that's walk with it. You do all sorts with it. So you pick the stone, you put it over your head, you carry it overhead, and you walk across things overhead. You'd run. Knights, for example, would do odd things like this. I can't remember what you call it now. Is it mass wrestling? They call it now. Anyway, they used to hold a stick. Each one would hold a stick with their feet to the other, and then pull them. The person who pulled them, who came off the ground first, was the loser. But they'd do things like that. They'd have people on their heads, and they'd squat and they'd run with people on their shoulder.
Yeah.
That kind of thing is what sort of we're looking at. So movement systems, modern movement systems, have great parallels with with ancient movement systems.
Well, I mean, I don't think we ever lost that, because if you look at certain routes through this movement pathway way back in time, the Eastern Bloc have never lost it.
No.
For a start. I mean, they didn't have... Because when you talk about, the change in the 80s, that's very much an American, Amerocentric view of it. Steroids and bodybuilding and the rest of it, Arnie's heyday. Not making any, assumptions that Arnie was on roids in any way. But nonetheless, nonetheless, he was.
You don't get that big.
Well, he's
not in a protein shake.
He said it himself. He said, "Oh yeah, I did that," and it's in what's the film he's in again? The first film that he did, the documentary. Pumping Iron. Yeah. He says, "Oh yeah, he'd do anything to win."
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so there you go. We've got the rise, which I think we still are, infected by, of the body aesthetic. It don't matter what you can actually do with it, but it's how it looks.
Yeah.
So everybody wants, chest and guns.
I would say
and abs.
here, they'll come in, bodybuilders who come in here thinking they're going to do all right, but they get twisted up pretty fast, even though their joints don't look like they're going to move that way.
Because functionally,
we put them that way.
Yeah.
The other thing to look at is, that's a parallel to this, is how our culture has changed. So it's a very sedentary culture these days. Now, there's a slide I used in my teaching which has got a firing position that the American military used to train their soldiers to use. And so, effectively, it's a deep arse-to-grass squat with your elbows propped on the top of your knees and the rifle held like that. So you make a very small target. You've got your heels on the floor. It's a very stable position. It's not perhaps your first, stable shooting position, but it was one that they used to teach alongside others. Now, after the great economic crash and famine, etc., and America started to rebuild itself, everybody migrated to the cities. And they stopped, therefore, them being farm workers and lumberjacks and steel workers or whatever, and became office workers and became chair-shaped. And the military had to lose this pattern because people couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Their young recruits were rocking up and they couldn't squat because they never used that range of movement. Whereas when they grew up on Granddaddy's farm, they used to squat down to lift up a keg of milk or whatever, or feed the animals or pick a calf up, whatever. But they used those functional patterns in the same way that the steel workers, if you look at those lovely old pictures of them 60-year-old geezers that made the skyscrapers, they're all buff, they're all ripped. And that's all functional. You look at their forearms, they've got knotted cords of muscle from 30 odd years of hand banging rivets in. They balanced on the girders, no safety harnesses. That's a way that you train your body very functionally.
Adam was telling me a story, and he didn't quite get to say it last week. And while he was in the Hungarian army, and they had their own base camp. The Americans were next to them, and inside that base camp, the American base camp, there was a McDonald's.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and he was like, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that they had military personnel who were overweight.
Yeah.
And were completely sat in office chairs the whole time, didn't do anything else, and ate McDonald's.
There's a significant proportion of military personnel that are overweight, and there's also a proportion that are obese.
Yeah.
So not just overweight.
Yeah, he was so surprised
If
by
you talk
it.
to anybody that was on
fitness
Optelic.
checks or whatnot?
Yeah, but they do.
Do you have them after? Or
It's a little bit like the Royal Navy. Come on, let's dismantle those. Very different
Why not?
from
We've done it everywhere
very
else.
different from your bootnecks in the sense that there's a saying in the Navy that once you get your hooks up, so you achieve a certain rank, and then there's a fitness test that comes around once a year. It's pretty straightforward, and you can train a little bit for that. Then you're on board a ship and you get well fed. So fairly sedentary. There's technology really fighting wars these days. So drone pilots potentially are great big fat guys who look like comic book guy out of The Simpsons, and they're getting more kills than any Second World War fighting hero because they know how to fly a drone. So, you know, that's what your modern military's going to look like.
I mean, Spartans, like, let's take the Spartans for example. Once they had completed their training, once they were 30 years old and they were considered men, they were entirely responsible for their own physical training themselves. There was no more group training or anything like that. If they wanted to train as a group, they had to organise it themselves. So they were entirely, and not entirely sure, but I think a lot of military personnel, once they finished their basic training, they were responsible for their own training.
I think a lot of military personnel in those days, once they'd finished their military, were dead, weren't they?
Yeah.
Because effectively they'd just gone off and fought the Peloponnesians, you know, for years and years. Got killed. I don't think there was much longevity.
Arm missing, something. One
Well,
arm
yeah.
yeah. One arm kettlebell swings, so they've only got one arm.
Yeah.
I can do it with my teeth. Do it.
Well, they desired nothing more than Spartans than to die in battle. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There weren't many old.
They didn't have a pension, did they?
Mind you, some of the old the old samurai, and even sort of like because Sakuraba says he wants to die in the cage because he thinks that's how the samurai wanted to do it.
Yeah.
He's a bit mental, really.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Very good fighter.
yeah, that whole sort of that sort of samurai mindset still infects some of their thinking, which is what we kind of miss. I think a lot of the West, it just wants to be comfortable, and again, we touched on this last week. You want to sit in an office and do your work, and then you want to go to the gym and sit down and do your training like that. And that's
Or you want to run on a treadmill that runs for you.
Yeah,
or you want to
yeah.
sit on a bike and turn your legs over whilst you watch the telly.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think actually it goes beyond that as well. There's a sort of certainly a Western culture where there's a couple of principles that we've got to start wrestling away from people. I've seen working in the medical profession like this kind of change over the last decade as well, where people of maybe our parents' generation, they get this thing called white coat psychosis. So you kind of complain about your ails and illnesses. You go and see the doctor and you go, "No, I'm all right, doc. No, it's nothing. Well, I had a bit of an ache, but I'm fine." And you have this kind of belief system, which basically the people that wear white coats are somehow directly connected to God and have this amazing power over human. And they go, he's going to give me a pill and then I'll be okay. Or a diagnosis even. I've seen a lot of people, all they want is a diagnosis. You get diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. All right, finally, somebody knows what I've got. No, they don't. That's just 3 words thrown together that just means your gut really doesn't like something you're doing to it.
Yeah.
It doesn't give you an answer. You've got to give up wheat, or you've got to give up milk. You've got to find out for yourself what your gut doesn't like.
Yeah, what it is
and
that it's rejecting.
I think that's the fundamental thing that we have a nanny culture, because it's comfortable for governments to keep us quiet and watch TV and give us fast food, and then we'll all just live happy, meaningless lives and die quietly. Not giving them any stress. But you've got to start thinking for yourself and taking on the responsibility for yourself of where do you want to go with your life? How do you want to move? How do you want to live? What age do you want to live to?
I remember you said about when I had the scan for my injury, you was like, "You're not going to treat the scan, we're going to treat your body, your injury." Not like the scan doesn't dictate the treatment. You just said we're going to treat the injury, not the scan.
That's exactly right. Because
that was a big one for me.
And even within the medical research, you can take MRIs of randomly off the street, 300 people, and all of them will have signs of wear and tear in their spine and slight prolapsed discs and stuff. And yet, when people do have pain, we get those scans, and then we say, "Well, look, here's the proof then of the pain." Well, hold on a second. Everybody's got these issues on the scan, so why have some people got pain? You need a different model. You've got to look at, we know, don't we, because we're involved in this, but the contemporary thinking is holistically, how does your body move? How do you live? What fuel are you putting in it? What suits you? Where do you make up your own system, and what do you draw from in order to make you the best you can be?
Yeah, I think there's an approach where people want to just put patches on things. They don't want to rethink the whole thing. Yeah. They just want to
oh yeah, that's not working. Let's just put a plaster on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Instead of thinking, well, instead of just putting a plaster on it, why don't I stop the reason I'm getting cut in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't I prevent that from happening by looking at myself as a person, not just as a, I don't know, just as a one single goal. That would be the example that I wanted to have. I wanted to pull 300. I wanted to squat 320, and I wanted to bench press 180 kilos. All those three things. That's all I wanted. So focused on that no matter what happened, no matter how I was feeling, that's what I was trying to do.
Strap me up, jab me up, get me through it.
Well, whatever it took or I wanted to do whatever it took to, and then I realised actually what it would entail. And I thought, well, actually, this sit there and think, well, I don't really want to do these things that it takes because it will break me. You know, and how will I feel in 30 years' time? You know, will I be broken like I've seen, like you see a
heart attack?
Yeah, or have a heart attack through like overconsumption of calories. You know, I was the heaviest I was 93 or 95 kilos roughly. I'm 5'6", and that is a horrendous weight.
That's round.
It was real round, and it's really hard because you're walking upstairs, and I was maybe about 20% body fat. I'm walking upstairs, but even if I was only like 10% body fat, that's still 95 kilos of 5'6" man. I've got to try and walk upstairs. It's making me out of breath. So, you know what? Fuck this. This ain't right.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. You know, I'm thinking this is stupid. What am I doing?
And when you think like you've got maybe 3 times body weight going down through that leg, so if you're ascending some steep steps, or God forbid you're jumping off a 2-foot wall, that's a lot of stress.
Because I've still got the same joints. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've still got the same bones.
Well, they toughen up a bit. You get a bit more articular cartilage laying down in order to cope. But your body can only do so much.
So,
At some point, you start screaming at you, saying, "Mate, what are you doing? Come on, give me a break." And that's the pain.
Yeah.
But you've got 2 choices, like you said. You either cover that up and take the drugs and buy into the ibuprofen scenario, or you go, "Let's stop this." Because it's madness.
There's a lot of people who would just got to that point and thought, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take a load of painkillers and smash in some Dianabol, and I'll get a little bit quicker, and I'll get to where I want to go, and then I'll hide the pain in my back or whatever, you know. And that was my crossroads, you know. I could either do that, or I could think I need to do something different. I need to completely overhaul my thinking about strength and conditioning and my thinking about health in general. Because I had a bit of a scare with, not just a scare, I had to go to hospital because I had like an inflamed bowel, and it was from the bowel was inflamed from me eating so much wheat, like just huge amounts of it. And I've never really had a allergy before. I got diagnosed with celiac disease, and I reckon that the only reason I got diagnosed, ended up with celiac, is because I consumed too much.
You triggered it.
Yeah, I triggered it by eating too much.
Well, it's a school of thought.
5,000 calories, and the easiest way to do that is with food that's full of wheat. It wouldn't matter what it was. I'd just put it in my mouth and eat it. It was
different podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, it was.
Is that how you made your money for your drink?
Any food. Well, I never ended up doing that. That's the crossroads I've got to come to, because it's when you're competing against other people, even the drug-tested people, it's easy to hide for people to come clean on tests, but actually take steroids.
Yeah, we've got a massive issue with that at the moment with swimmers. I mean, FMO has been banned at the minute, but what's annoying and upsetting about it is that you work with athletes that are 100% clean, and yet there's people still out. There's an endemic culture in America and in other countries of systematic doping.
Yeah.
And it just breaks you, because the sport then just becomes, well, we saw it happen in cycling. But
but that kind of thing happens.
But you've got clean bodybuilders now, haven't you? I mean, not clean. You've got natural bodybuilders. You've got natural
bodybuilders.
You won't be in the. It'd be a natural bodybuilding contest, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then then
But that's what I'm saying though, is people like-minded like you, where you get to that point, you go, I'm not going down this route at any cost. I'm going to eat
I'm
clean,
just wondering
train.
how that works though. Natural bodybuilding and bodybuilding. So they're basically saying they're steadheads, isn't they?
Yes.
Basically.
Yeah,
So
they are. Yeah.
how is that?
That's right. It's
Is
almost
that
like
right?
you're fessing up.
It's not right. It's just
So
that's it.
shouldn't
That's
they
what it
have
is.
like natural swimming and
And steroids. Swimming.
steroid swimming?
Like
Yeah, well,
You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah,
like,
I do, yeah.
untested Olympics.
yeah, it's like whatever. If you want to do it, do it. But you're not like you're not the champion of the world because you're
You're the drug
You're doing
champion
drug. Yeah, you're the
of the
drug
world.
champion of the world.
But a lot of people's argument would
So
be
they're not winning, are they? Really?
well, a lot of people aren't. A lot of
Access
people's
to
argument.
better drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or some
You got more
drugs.
money to buy more steroids. Well done. It's good.
And also, yeah, you got the like you were saying, you can cover it up because you can buy the masking agents. So
And then the masking agents get banned, but then another masking agent gets developed, or they do that thing they did in cycling, blood doping, which is really fucking risky, by the way. If you get it wrong, so say the blood's slightly congealed and they stick it back in, you will die. It's really fucking risky. People are risking their lives to win a contest. Essentially.
Nearly every sport, like we don't do competition jiu-jitsu here, but I know BJJ is having a big problem with steroids and stuff.
Yeah.
They need it. MMA.
again, I think it goes back to the root, you know, where we started this particular little strand, doesn't it? Where you're looking at win at any cost is the culture. I mean, I might look at my own culture and say that happened in the 80s under a Thatcher government, but that's my personal politics.
What they used to take in the ancient training systems you're talking about, did they take any supplements back then? What would it have been?
No, they have access. They only have access to the food that's nearby to them. So
Yeah, but hold on a second.
yeah,
Food,
Yeah.
food, right?
yeah.
Is medicine. So
Yeah.
they, I'm sure, knew in the same way that we could go out and buy, white willow bark, and you're going to use that, and that's salicylic acid, which is aspirin. But that's its root form. In fact, it's better than aspirin because there's so many alkaloids in it we still can't identify. So I'm going to suggest to you that actually those ancients had knowledges.
Some of them
What-
did.
what-
Yeah.
what they could harvest
What could
things.
they use, do you think?
All sorts.
All
Teas, for example. would
Tiger's
be-
testicles. You know, I mean, come on, everything. They're still using it in China, aren't they?
I don't know.
Or things, you know. I mean,
They-
like natural.
Well, one of the things, let's take the Norse Galaglass, for example. Some of the biggest and strongest warriors in the West during the Middle Ages. And what they would do is they'd eat an absolute, just huge amounts of oats, vast amounts of milk, and quite a lot of beef. More beef and blood. So more beef than other people in Ireland and in England would have had. Much more. So they knew that would make them big. That would get them the size and strength that they needed to be as intimidating as they were, as opposed to other people around them. But also we get a warped idea about historical people, like the idea that people think that Vikings were these huge, muscular. They're not really. They were probably slightly taller than, say, your average English person now, but not any bigger. And the idea that they were that they only ate foods that were available to them nearby. So these foods had thousands and thousands of years and generations and generations of people eating them and not getting ill. So they'd find the things that particular sort of your particular family line would say your particular family line would be has an allergy to. So you eat rice, you get bloated. They stop eating rice, they stop growing it. Your whole family and the farms around it stop growing it, so stop eating it. And that's probably why they're a little bit healthier than we are, because we now have access to everything. We can eat everything around the world, and some people probably aren't,
okay,
here's for it.
Here's something I want to throw in on that then, because one thing I was just looking at 2 weeks ago was actually, if you take a Western diet, and I wish I'd have kind of remembered this or even brought it with me, but it's very interesting when you look at the range of food, food produce, the variety, if you like, of the foodstuffs that we consume in a Western diet is far, far smaller than ancient times, where the variety, not the amount, but the variety would be far, far bigger. So I always like to try and simplify these things. So I go, right, today, us three, we're going to go for a walk in the woods, and we're going to find something to eat. So what we come across today in the woods is what we're going to eat. So we might find some bulrushes and dig up the tubers, and that's our starchy bit. And there's a great big patch of nettles. We'll harvest them, and that's our greenery, and we'll cook them. And we find a bird's nest, great, couple of eggs, whatever. That's our meal today. I can see a nice little omelette coming along. All right, but then we go tomorrow, and there's no eggs in that nest, or we take a different route. We find some berries, and we find these other plants that we know about that I don't know about these days, and we eat that. So every day, the day after that, we take a trip down to the harbour side. The tide's out, and we collect a load of seafood and seaweed, and that's what we eat. So the actual variety, as you said, was dictated by your immediate environment, what was available, seasonal changes, migratory patterns of animals, all sorts of things. So there's this huge variety. We weren't eating much of it because there wasn't, there was no agriculture, we didn't mass produce it. So we had little bits of a lot of different things. Whereas these days, I can't remember the figures, it's out there if you're just going to have a look at it, because this research was just out a little while ago, but I think somewhere in the region of, 250 foodstuffs, and you're looking at the Western world. So when you reduce it down to this small population of agricultural produce, I mean, you can probably think it through. We got, corn, we got wheat, we got oats, we got barley. You can easily write down a list of the stuff that we grow.
Yeah.
And then, effectively, if you look at the labels on any food or stuff, unless you're eating fresh all the time, it's made from the same stuff.
Yeah. Here in the UK, it's like everything you read is made of wheat. Yeah. Over in America, everything you read is made of corn. Everything. Everything's got, what do they call that thing? It tastes rank. High fructose corn syrup.
Yeah. Which is sugar.
It tastes
by any other
nasty. But it's in everything. Like even their alcoholic drinks, bourbon, is made out of corn.
That's right. And because it tastes so horrible, you got to chuck a load of salt in there to make it taste alright. Yeah. But it's the same recipe all the time. We don't get a chance to move out of that. Imagine if we lived in a tropical Brazilian rainforest. We could go for a walk, and we could probably come back with a basket of about 75 different foodstuffs. What a great variety.
That's how you eat berries off the
Yeah. Loads of stuff.
But we don't eat a lot of root vegetables that we used to. Because we eat a lot of potatoes, for example, we don't eat turnip.
Well, we eat modern potatoes as well. Because I love going around to these CrossFit boxes and doing my teaching thing, and there's all these guys, and they're very much into their paleo diets.
Yeah.
But they've never looked beyond the marketing at the moment for paleo diets, and they'll be eating, 25 chicken breasts, and maybe some of them will have a bit of veg. And I go, all right. And they go, yeah, paleo, got to eat paleo. Okay, fine. What do paleo people eat then? I mean, what paleo people are you talking about? What do you mean? Well, go back to your what's it called when you study ancient things? Your
ancestors.
Yeah, but I can't think of the word now. You know the word I mean. Just comes to me in a minute. But the point is, when you go back and look at the research from the people that do study these things, what they ate. For a start, paleo people didn't travel. So where you lived, where your tribe lived, your group, your family group, was pretty much where you were going to be born and die. So if you lived by the sea, you were going to eat a lot of seafood, right?
Yeah.
If you lived in the middle of a big old forest, you're going to eat a lot of berries, nuts, seeds, eggs, birds, and occasionally maybe a
fungi and stuff like that.
Fungi, loads of stuff. But you ate what was around you. North American Indians, the only, even if you look at the Plains Indians, they followed the migration of the buffalo, and they used to trade some of the buffalo stuff. Please take some of our meat and give us some veggies, some berries or whatever. So, when they say paleo diet, I say, where was your paleo tribe that you imagine? Did they live by the sea? Obviously, your paleo tribe lived in a chicken farm because you're eating 25 chicken breasts, right?
Yeah.
What have you got up there? I haven't got my glasses
doesn't
on. Oh, you're looking at
No,
genealogy.
Genealogy rather than the study of poo.
Study of what?
Poo.
it's corporalite.
Yeah.
Study of poo.
Yeah,
Study
well,
of poo.
we just discussed this
Yeah,
before.
I know.
About
So
yeah.
what's in that ancient poo tells you what they're eating.
Yeah, like there was an example I read about a Scottish knight, and they looked at his diet, and it was mostly fish. One for religious reasons, and two because he lived just off the coast of the Argyll, so there's plenty of fishermen and that. So that's what he ate. Didn't eat much. They didn't eat a huge amount of red meat because it's expensive, red meat, especially in England. So, but if you go over the water over to Ireland, one of their main foodstuffs was beef. Their cattle was currency. So the more cattle you had, the richer you were. So milk was a big produce over there. So you'd actually be paid in cattle for services to the lords over in Ireland. So a year's service to him, you might get 3 cow. And cattle raids were really common, but that's going off topic now. We're talking about what people eat. Yeah, so the Scottish knight would eat just mostly a diet of fish and vegetables.
That in the study of poo, is it?
No, it is, but in a slightly different way. Yeah, that's more contemporary. Corporalite is fossilised poo. There's plenty of websites for modern poo activities, but that's a slightly different thing.
Scatology.
Right. Well, we're going to bring this to a close. Do you want to?
Are you sure we're only just warming up?
Yeah. but do you
he's
want?
found his humorous veins.
You're giggling too much.
gone,
He's gone.
Good. Do you want to tell people where they can find you?
In Plymouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, but my company's Physio Conditioning, and if you want to have a look at what I do, you can go to the physioconditioning.com website and find out about what it is that we do.
You should go. I've trained there. It's the best place.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Well, good to meet you. Thanks for inviting me.
Pleasure.